Hey everybody, I'm the Artful Spuddler and welcome back to my channel where I explain and demonstrate how I create contemporary batik paintings on cotton. In this video I want to run through the batik painting process and show you the way most people are introduced to this wonderful way of creating images and designs on cloth. Just a quick note, batik painting on silk is a very different way of dyeing, so if you want to create imagery on silk, please take a look at the many videos available to explain that process, or go to a reputable dye supplier such as the Dharma trading company for their advice on silk dye. And if you want to know more about the fabric choices available for batik painting with fibre reactive dyes, please take a look at my video on fabrics, and I'll include a link to this in the description of this video. If you've ever taken a batik class, you were probably asked to create a simple line drawing to work from, or maybe this was provided to you by the teacher. And this is because with batik painting, everything starts with a line drawing. Because batik painting doesn't allow an artist to correct mistakes once the dye or wax has been added to a piece of fabric, only the very experienced batik artists would consider working freehand. Because of this, most artists begin by drawing up a line drawing of what they want to produce and trace this onto their fabric before the cloth is stretched on a frame and the batik painting begins. Now, quite how detailed that line drawing is will depend on the artist and what they're producing, but all spend time making their line drawings as beautiful as possible, because in batik painting, it's all about colour and shape. When deciding on a subject matter, it's always worth choosing something that is colourful and full of interesting shapes, and for this example I've decided to create a very simple painting of koi carp. To begin my batik painting, I look at lots of photographs of these beautiful fish, and because this batik is for beginners, I'm going to keep the scale, composition and colour scheme pretty basic, as I really want to just focus on how beginners can create something quite beautiful with just a few basic skills. For most of this example of batik painting, I'll be using what is known as the closed wax barrier method, which means I need to create shapes in my design as I'll be outlining them in wax and then colouring each of them a different colour. Now for this type of batik, as the dyes won't be mixing on the cloth, technically colour planning really isn't necessary. But it is a good way to create a rough visual to work from and to make sure that your lines join up, creating those shapes that you need. So here's my line drawing for this batik, and I'm just going to quickly trace it onto a separate piece of paper, which I'll colour up and add notes to. You can of course sketch a smaller version of this line drawing by hand in a sketch pad, but for speed this is the easiest way, and I drew up the fish on paper separately so that I could play around with the colours before marking up my line drawing. Now this colour plan will be added to later in a separate video when I run through a second way of batik painting. But for this very simple version, I'm confident that I have a good idea of what I want to create. When sketching the fish, I noticed a couple of shapes that weren't fully enclosed, so I went back to my line drawing and amended these. And I find trying out the design on paper with coloured pens or pencils allows me to make sure that my line drawing is well drawn and that all enclosed shapes are actually fully enclosed by the lines that I've drawn onto my paper. So now that I have completed the planning phase of this batik painting, it's time to transfer my line drawing onto fabric and begin. For this batik, I'm using a basic lawn cotton again. This is a great economical fabric and is a good middle-of-the-road type of material, making it easy for beginners to use. But you can use any fabric which is made from natural cellulose fibres such as linen, hemp or bamboo. However, cotton tends to be the most commonly used fabric for this type of batik painting. Before drawing up my design, I need to prepare the cloth for dyeing, and this is known as scouring. I've popped the recipe of this on screen, but if you haven't done this before, please take a look at my video entitled 4 Ways to Dye Cotton, where I run through the scouring process in detail. In that video, you will also find detailed instructions on how to pre-soak your cloth, which is the second thing that you'll need to do before beginning to batik. Neither of these steps are difficult, and if you want your batik to be vibrant and the colours to last, these 2 steps are really quite important. With all that done, it's now time to transfer my line drawing onto my fabric. First off, I need to cut my cloth to size, and I need to make sure to cut the cotton to the size of the frame and not the size of my drawing. And I tend to allow a slight overhang, as this makes stretching the cloth onto my frame a lot easier, and it also gives me a small test area to try out colours on. When it comes to frames, an old picture frame will do, or a homemade wooden frame is perfect. But for this batik, I've decided to use an embroidery hoop. This fits the composition perfectly, and I can use the hoop at the end to frame and hang my batik with. So it's a bit of a win-win in my book. So to transfer my line drawing onto my cotton, I tape my line drawing to my light box, making sure not to stretch or twist it, and then with the aid of the light box, I simply transfer my design onto my cloth, pressing lightly and with a reasonably soft pencil such as a 2B. If you're trying this at home and you don't have a light box, simply draw over your line drawing with a marker pen such as a Sharpie, and then just pop your fabric on top, and you should be able to see the lines clearly enough to transfer them over. But if all else fails, pin your line drawing to a window, tape the fabric over the top, and the light shining through the window will create a temporary light box for you. When drawing up my line drawing, I tend to use a soft pencil. I make sure that it's nice and sharp, and then I press lightly when drawing up my work. Now, if I press too hard when drawing up my designs, the fabric may pucker and the design will come out jagged, distorted, and maybe even missing in parts. So by using a soft grade pencil and pressing lightly, I can still make the mark dark enough, but without having to press hard to create it. Then it was simply a case of stretching my fabric onto my frame, again making sure not to overstretch it or distort the weave in any way. And with that done, it was time to heat up my wax and charge my wax pens. For this batik, I thought that I'd use soya wax and a double boiler. Now, soya wax isn't the most robust of waxes, but it is non-toxic and can be washed out at the end using warm water. So I thought that it was a good choice for this simple design, and if you haven't got a professional wax pot, then I recommend this way of melting your wax, as you can probably find equipment in your kitchen that might fit the bill. To create a double boiler, fill a small saucepan with about half or 2/3 full of water and heat this up. Pop a second, smaller saucepan or a metal container inside the first pot so that it hangs off of the rim and doesn't sit in the water below, and then heat the water to boiling. Once the wax begins to melt, reduce the temperature slightly so that the water is simmering, and add your wax pens to the wax, and you can let them charge for a while. Charging is when the metal of the wax pen heats up to the same temperature as the wax, and being metal, it'll help keep the wax hot for longer when you're using your pen. Ideally, you need enough wax in your melter to cover the metal part of your wax pen fully, as this will make the charging quicker and more effective. So I've just added a few more flakes of soya wax to my pot, just to top it up a little. When hot wax meets cotton fabric, it wraps around the fibres and encases them in wax, which is water insoluble. So when a dye is then added to the fabric, those areas encased by the wax will not change colour, and by the end will appear as white lines. When you create an enclosed wax barrier, the area within the enclosed line and the area outside the enclosed line are now separate, with the wax creating a solid barrier, which stops the dyes from bleeding and mixing with each other. When creating a batik made up of wax barriers, a reasonably wide nib is needed, around a 0.6mm or a grade 0 or 1 janting. This will make the lines wide enough to make a good wax barrier, and although when painting I will need to be quite careful, they should be good enough for this particular type of batik. Just remember that the larger the nib size, the cooler that the wax needs to be, as heat makes the wax runny. And with a large nib, if the wax is too hot and runny, it'll become uncontrollable when drawn onto the cloth. Every wax and wax mix will have an optimum temperature, which may be slightly different each time depending on other factors such as the room temperature and humidity. And as I don't use soya wax very often, I spent a few moments trying out the options for wax pens and deciding on the tool of my choice. I then adjusted the temperature of the wax to get the flow exactly right for that tool, and this I did all on just a spare scrap of paper. But it is important to also try out the wax on the fabric, and the way that wax behaves on paper and on fabric is a little different. But I find beginning with exercises on paper is a great way to warm up and feel comfortable using my wax pen. And as you can see, the double boiler does generate quite a bit of steam, so have a window open when you do this. If you want to learn how to use a wax pen correctly, I've created a video covering this, and the link will be in the description to this video. Once I was warmed up, it was time to begin waxing in my lines. I always start off with the easy lines, as this allows me to get used to the waxing before handling anything too complex. So I began by creating the circles on my cloth, making sure that the beginning and the end joined up. When it comes to the wax lines, the most important thing is to make sure that all of the wax barriers are enclosed. Just one tiny gap in a barrier, and when the dyes are added, the barriers will fail and the colours will blend, which is not the intention. So I really take time with these wax marks, and if I need to recharge my pen before I've completed a wax barrier, I go back over, wax the end of the last line and continue to the end again, waxing over the beginning of the line to make sure that the barriers are fully enclosed and robust. Once I'd done this, I flipped my frame over and took a look at the back. Now there are obvious places where, although looking good from the front, from the back I can see that the wax hasn't fully covered the fibres and the wax line looks thready and uneven. In order to strengthen these, I simply re-wax all of my lines from the back. And then just for one final check, I popped my light box on, and this allowed me to see the wax marks really well. And where I saw a line that didn't join up fully, or even a line that I'd accidentally missed, I just re-waxed that line again. Once all the wax lines were in, it was time to pop my batik to one side for a few moments and turn to mixing up my dyes. I began by mixing up some chemical water, which is made up of water, soda ash and urea, and this can be made beforehand and left to cool. Then I simply poured a small amount of the chemical water into small plastic tubs, enough in each for this size of painting. Add the chemical water first and then the dye powder, and also remember to pop on a mask with this part of the process. I made up a larger amount of turquoise dye for this, as this will be the basis of the background, and I only mixed up the tiniest amount of black, as this is only needed in a few places. The remaining tub of chemical water will be used for diluting my colours, and I also included a container full of plain old tap water for washing my brushes with, as well as rinsing out my pipettes. With these four colours you'll be able to mix whatever colour you want to, but you can easily use pre-mixed colours if that's what you've got. Referring to my colour plan for reference, it was then simply a case of mixing up each of the colours and adding them onto the cloth within the relevant shape. I mixed each new colour in a separate compartment of my palette, and if I ended up with more dye than I needed, I simply transferred an amount of the first colour into a separate compartment and then added either more dyes or chemical water to that colour. This technique is especially useful if you want a number of different strengths of the same colour, and it's also a great way of staying economical. When mixing up dyes, I always try them out on a spare scrap of fabric and dry the fabric with a hairdryer to make sure that I see the colour that it will be at the end. Now the colours change quite a lot from wet to dry, and so assessing my colours once they're dry hopefully will prevent too many colour mixing errors. And as you can see, the colour on my palette is not necessarily the colour that I end up with. When I was happy with the colour palette that I created, I turned my attention to my batik and began to paint the colours as indicated in my colour plan. When doing this, it is important to concentrate, as although this looks easy, one wrong move and the whole thing could be spoiled. I used a small brush with a point for this, and when applying the dyes I made sure not to overcharge my brush. That is, to pick up too much dye on my brush, as I need to control the spread, and if I put too much dye on the brush and paint this on, especially near to the wax lines, there is a chance that the dyes will bleed onto the other side, so watch out for this. Whenever I changed colour, I made sure to wash my brush out fully, dry it on a rag, and if necessary wash it again, making sure not to contaminate the next colour because of a dirty brush. I use my rag to remove a little of my dye from my brush before applying it to the areas nearest to the wax lines. And to make sure that I don't paint over my wax lines, I put my brush down a little away from the line and allow the dye to spread up to the line. The purpose of this is to make sure that no dye sits on top of the wax line, because that could then transfer over to the other side and bleed into your next colour. This is a process that I really enjoy, seeing the bright colours changing my fabric, and I have to confess I tend to put on an audiobook and just enjoy the moment when I'm painting this way. I allow plenty of time for this so that I really can slow down and just enjoy watching my project begin to come to life. To finish off my first fish, I just add a tiny bit of black to the remaining areas that I haven't painted colour into yet. I removed almost all of the dye from my brush before adding this colour, as the areas are so small, and if I add too much dye, it's likely to bleed outwards as the fabric cures. Then I simply turned the frame around and painted in the dyes on the second fish. Now this dye session lasted around an hour in total, so it is important to take regular breaks and resist the urge to rush things. Once the final black circles were added, it was time to mix up the background colour and complete my batik. For this, all I did was add a tiny bit of lemon yellow dye to the turquoise tub, and this created a blue-green colour, which will be a wonderful contrast to the mainly orange-red colours of the fish. I tested my dye on my practice cloth, and as I was happy with the colour on the first try, I spent about half an hour painting in the background, using a slightly larger brush for the larger areas and the small brush for around the waxed areas, using as much care as when I was painting the fish. When this was done, it was time to put my batik on a flat surface and leave it to cure. As this batik is going to be washed in hot soapy water at the end to remove the soya wax, I want the curing process to be as long and as good as possible. So I popped my batik into a large plastic envelope, one of the ones I used to store my sketches in, and left this for around 40 hours in my kitchen, which is relatively warm. If you don't have a large plastic envelope like this one and you want to try batik at home, wrap your batik in cling film and it should do the trick. Then, when the curing time is up, I removed my batik from the frame and first off washed it in cool water. Now, soya wax is the only wax that can be washed out with soap and some warm water. However, this also means that the wax is not as robust as normal batik waxes are, and this does come with some technical issues, which I will mention in a moment. Once the fabric had been thoroughly rinsed and left to dry, it was time to run a hot iron over my cloth, and here is the final piece. Now, I love the colours that I've used here, and I think that they really make for a lively and vibrant batik. The wax lines are pretty good, and I can only see a couple of places where the dyes have bled. Now, I kept an eye on my batik as it cured, and these bleeds didn't actually begin to appear until after about 12 hours or so, and I suspect that this is another example of wax erosion. You see, the soda ash will eat into all waxes, but with soya wax, being the most fragile of waxes, this erosion can impact a batik at any time, and I suspect that these bleeds were due to the wax barrier disintegrating during the curing process. Now, this by no means means that the batik is a failure, as with batik, mistakes and all things unexpected is part of the nature of the medium. If I did this project again, I'd probably make the background just a little bit more punchy, but that's just me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you try batik out at home. It really is a wonderful way to be creative, to find some time to just meditate and enjoy the beauty of colour and the fluidity that you get with wax. And once you've tried it, I reckon you'll be hooked. In my next video, I will be taking the same line drawing as used for this project, and I'm going to batik it my way. So if you're interested in that, remember to subscribe and put your notifications on. And on that note, I want to wish you all a very happy new year. And remember, whatever you do in 2026, just make it creative.